About this incident, first of all, I would like to send condolences to the nation, to the families, to the school, to the district, and to all humanity, because this incident was very, very grim. It is also very scary. And why is it very scary? It attacked the most vulnerable people that you'd say in society. I have tried to make sense of what this thing was all about, and you really cannot make much sense. Of course, we know it's ADF, and we have been told it's ADF, but the question is, what are their demands? What do they want? And unlike previous terror strategies where you have guns and you have bombs and you have this one is very scary because of the nature in which it was carried out. The whole issue of the machetes and people being stabbed and people being slaughtered. And there's a new video which came out today of what they claim to be the fate of the students they abducted. And the video is very scary. I mean, about these kids who I think after having carried food, we are told, to a certain place, they are then slaughtered like goats. It's not a thing you'd imagine you would look at. So it's a very, very bad situation. And we have had ADF with us for a number of years. The issue is it is not clear what actually they want. Okay, I know many times when terror groups come up, you have an ideological angle. You also have claims that are made around which the ideology becomes the vehicle to drive those claims. And those claims are either claims of economic marginalization, social marginalization, ethnic oppression. But you see, you don't seem to get this with the ADF. They seem to be a people who have positioned themselves somewhere, of course also advantaged by the fact that that border is very long, it is very rugged. Not many places are policed by the very nature that a lot of it is flora, fauna, it's virgin territory, and would love to keep it like that for environmental purposes. But then you also have that then being used against us, okay? In that the enemy then hides inside there and then comes out and wreaks havoc. And the nature of these Great Lakes things, like mainly, maybe even also what happened in northern Uganda, as Honorable Mapenduzi has said, and this very one, is that it seems to go for the communities where people are. I would not really understand, but it is a bit comprehensible if people go for those who they consider to be enemies, to consider to be foreigners. But if, as Honorable Chiyonga has said, people are being picked from different parts of the country for radicalization to mete out havoc on people who are basically living peacefully, people who are not responsible for their grievances, it is really unfair. Because, for example, out of this massacre, what has been the statement? I know when terrorists hit other places, they release a statement. We either want you to leave, we either want this change, we either want this, if you don't do this, we are coming back. What has been the statement in this? There has not been a statement. All we have seen is the massacre, okay, in a school. And we hope in future we shall get the statement. But there's no statement. So it just then becomes an act of brutality. And for how long will this brutality take place? And to what extent were the people who received the brutality deserving to get that brutality? What crime had they committed? These were children. But the other thing which actually becomes a problem is when you then hear stories reported in the news that the attackers spent, is it 2 days or 3 days in the community? That before the attackers attacked, there had been an attack on a market in the DRC. So if the attackers stayed in the community for 2 days or for 3 days, what did we do about reporting them? What could the community have done to prevent? And what this really means is we all have to take part in this thing of security. We all have a role to play in alerting those that are charged with maintaining security that there are people who are here, but we don't know who they are. We don't know what their intentions are. I remember in the past when we used to have the Mayumba Kumi system, if someone arrived, I mean, somehow the LC1, the equivalent of the LC1 now, would be informed of that this person has come under the mission. So, first of all, how were people able to know that the attackers had spent 2 days there before the attack? Then if they knew that they were not part of that community, what then should they have done? I think then this emphasizes the need for things like community policing, but also for those who are charged with investigating these kinds of things to get to the bottom of the matter. What is the mission? What is the statement? What is the grievance? We cannot always just come back and say, okay, ADF now killed 80 in Kichwamba, now have killed 40 or 60 in this community. Tomorrow we don't know what they are going to do. So I think for me that is my initial thoughts about it.
And Doctor, let me stay with you, especially with the thoughts you put there, with the 2 days that the community talks about, but also there was a travel advisory by the Americans to its citizens not to be able to come here. If this information was really available, like it has been said in the news, but also this advisory, who should we be holding accountable? Because every Ugandan life matters, and these are 40 gone.
Yeah, thank you, Timothy. You see, when an advisory comes, it is an advisory, and sometimes it's in general terms. It is not that very specific. So if there was a travel advisory against coming to Uganda, how would we have known that it means they're going to hit in Kasese? It could mean they're going to hit in Busia, or it could mean they're going to hit in Kampala. So I know there are those who are qualified and trained enough to make sense of travel advisories, and I'm not one of them. But for me, my thoughts are the travel advisories, one, abroad, and then two, we tend to think that these travel advisories are for a particular sector of people. And I know, like the people in Kasese, I don't think they were aware of this travel advisory. All they knew is people are amongst us, but also maybe that kind of community being a border always has people coming in and going out, okay? So I don't know whether first of all, I don't know how much the travel advisory went, but also we have to remember that the travel advisory by the American government came out at the time when we had passed the anti-homosexuality bill. And a lot of it was saying, the travel advisory to Uganda was, be careful because you could be suspected, you could be arrested. If you're suspected, you could be arrested. First of all, if you're gay, you'll land in trouble. But also if you're suspected, you could land in trouble. But also you could be framed and you land in trouble. So I think most people focused around there, okay? But I don't know, the security forces probably would have known that probably this means an attack, but the general public, we took it as a reaction towards the anti-gay bill, and maybe we thought it like that. But okay, at the end of the day, I think those who are most trained, the question should go to those who are most trained to do these kinds of things and make sense of it.
Okay, before we get to Honorable Kabyanga, so one of the things is you were an intelligence officer, you understand this terrain, but also there has been spats of issues there. Arrested people in Nansana claimed to be ADF. Also the different incidents that happened when the president called on to them to be able to attack security installations. Police installations were attacked, stations were attacked. When you look at this, how can we, is this the MO of ADF? Is this another outfit? What rebel outfit is this? We had the Uganda National Change for Coalition. Who is this? And why are they attacking students?
You see, you have to define certain variables. One, the definition of the security challenge. So are you defining that now? Or you are defining incidences, you are defining operations, you are defining parts of the whole. The second one, then if you define, then you define the hardware and the software. Yes, but this is done by intelligence first. And when you're doing intelligence, you also have to look at the consumer. Who is going to consume this intelligence? Of course, certainly who is the policy maker? And what is the character of the consumer, the policy maker? So in our own situation, And of course, this consumer, this policy maker will relate to the two, the software and the hardware. Because the one who purchases weaponry, is the one who will develop the military, is the one who will handle the software, which is the budget, the politics, the mobilization, the mass mobilization of the population, etc. Now, from my perspective, I have a huge conflict in this, because I think I'm in a different world in relation to the existing narrative. As you said, because I was an intelligence officer, of course, we have very deadly law. So I don't know how I will debate this in relation with that law that prohibits us sharing what we knew. But it brings me in as a character, because I've also paid the price in pursuit of truth in relation to the consumer of this intelligence. That's the president. Because this is what I know about him, that if he has the correct definition of the problem, he has the correct facts, you will have the best decision. That I know of him. But if you do not define the problem well, he will enter on your definition, but may discover the problem himself later, and then design a different solution. But in which case then he is overworked. So he becomes the intelligence, he becomes the everything. So with this force you are facing, I wrote papers. That was before the collapse of Gaddafi. Because we had intelligence from my sources. I got intelligence Gaddafi was going to be overthrown. I got intelligence they were going to attempt to overthrow Assad of Syria. And I also got intelligence they were going to attempt to overthrow Bashir. So I wrote papers in relation to our national survival. What would be the implications if, because for them they were looking at how to secure themselves against those who are going to destroy them. But because of Amin, you remember Amin related with Gaddafi and related with that infrastructure. So we had assets there. I got assets there. So when I wrote those papers, they were dismissed. You see, we had the top management to read through, said, but I think, these are your opinions. You get, because you see, for a president to develop an infrastructure, one, for intelligence gathering in relation to that problem, it will also relate to the policy of recruitment and training, which kind of personnel. If you're talking about ambassadors, the diplomats, which kind of diplomats will you send? What should they target to pick, etc. Now, when chaos happened there, I don't want to go through it. Now, when the reality now begins coming in, so you see an attack on Central Africa. You remember? The Bozize, the anti-Bozize force, the Seleka.
The Seleka.
Yes, so now then we intervene. But when we are intervening, had we picked the intelligence that led to the collapse of Gaddafi and the others, and how the remnants of Gaddafi, the remnants of Bashir now, the remnants, the intelligence of Syria would relate to us, since we were perceived as a front of the West. Because you see, it has a cost to it. If you are perceived as a front against Islamic fundamentalism, then you have to prepare for it. You don't see it and then mourn later. So now you see later the shift in policy. I think that time was announced by Mr. Mhozekeni Rugaba, that we would now leave Central Africa to reinforce our defenses against in the Rwenzori area. And that brings in now the definition of the advance of the force, or the definition of the force that overthrew Bozize, what we would call the Seleka. Did we have elements there? The initial conversation was, there is LRA, and I think it ended with that, if you remember. But that force advanced into Congo, and we are now containing with it at the border. Now, that was one aspect. The second aspect, I was also involved in monitoring the smuggling of weapons. And that was also a massive failure. And I've talked to a number of friends who are saying, but Rumshana, why don't we come and we work together or talk to? And I said, no, we should need to write papers to the president, informing the president where we failed. Let me talk to you. That the NRA and Mr. Museveni had obliterated insurgency. So what went wrong that they reorganized? Because to reorganize means we failed.
Who is reorganizing?
The insurgency. You see, there is when insurgency in Congo had been declared completely destroyed. And that's factual. It had been destroyed, no doubt about it.
All 120
no, you see,
outfits there.
You see, for an insurgency to reach even 10, there is an infrastructure you must have. The one who will recruit, where the recruited person will pass, the security of that recruited person, where the person will be trained from to become a soldier, mobilization of weaponry, and then construction of the intelligence system, deployment of that intelligence system. It's a whole complex system, and Mr. Museveni had destroyed it. That I know for a fact. I am not discussing the operations relating to the destruction of what forces were in Congo. No, I am relating to the reorganization.
Okay.
Right? So they reorganized. And they reorganized because the intelligence system betrayed Mr. Museveni. Of course, he also betrayed it. Because the question is, did he act? Yes, he's been acting at administrative level. You change the director general, you dismiss this, you do this, yes. But is that sufficient? There are certain other things probably we need to look into if we but anyway. So you have a reorganization of this force. And they are now active at the border. So the question is, do you have the proper definition of the reorganized force? So how can someone who failed in monitoring reorganization be the one to advise the president in countering the reorganized force? You get? You have that contradiction. And I have had the conversations also with Mr. Kirabakandwanaho, General Sare, on this. And my challenge to him was that you need to do deep thinking and break through the policy formulation systems of the insurgency. Right? For you are now dealing with the outcomes of part of their thought processes. Yes, attack of children, attack of this, and you are dealing with those. But what is the intention? Why the children? Whoever is attacking them, whoever is involved in this, why? So you may even find that by discussing it, you have achieved this objective. Yes, but by pop praying, the objective is achieved. And then the means to execute that operation. Because the means to execute it would then define the construction of the capability to counter him.
Okay.
Now we do not have those because you have the same collapsed elite or that same infrastructure, because you may have removed them administratively, but then you retain the infrastructure, the nature of infrastructure, and you are dealing with very closed societies that you cannot challenge internally. For us, we are from the external, brought in by the president, but even then we failed. We failed. You had people like Idro. You know, remember Philip Idro? He was Director General and he had problems with the internal security organization because the group he formed was, then you had Tumukunde, you remember, you also had a lot of problems with them. So we are the last lot, I think, with Procor and the others who did exit.
As you conclude, Charles.
So whereas you have these internal contradictions within, you have reorganization of groups that were defeated. Call it UFM, call it FEDEMO, call it LRI, whatever you want to call them. Call it ADF, that were defeated, and therefore they have a host of experience as to why they failed. For you, you do not have a mechanism of where you sit to discuss why you have gone wrong, what your weaknesses are. So the only thing now you do is to do fire brigade. They have attacked here, and then you by the way, even don't have a coherent mechanism of response in mobilizing the population. Because if you look at our political architecture, the current architecture you have is not what can respond to the challenges we have. Okay. Whether it's in the opposition, whether it is in the NRM caucus, I doubt. So you find that, therefore, the only existing infrastructure that you would have that would counter this is small, is overburdened, burdened with the provision of sugar, burdened with the provision of these things of our stomach. So you have the same president who is supposed to be doing deep thinking, is the same president who should be meeting. Vasukuru is the same president who should be, and then those who are left to do thinking actually don't do thinking.
Okay.